Hi everyone, I'm Tommy. Thank you for always watching my videos. Today I'd like to share some quick tips for therapists and trainers to use in their practice. Our topic today is about adding variations to chest stretches. Let's get started with stretching around the chest area. What approach do you usually take? The muscles around the chest can be broadly divided into two categories. One is the pectoralis minor and the other is the pectoralis major. First, let's look at the position of these muscles. The pectoralis minor and major muscles are positioned with the minor muscle lying underneath the major muscle. It's a layered structure with the pectoralis major on top of the pectoralis minor. The starting point of the pectoralis minor is in the rib area. It begins at ribs 3, 4, and 5 and ends at the front of the scapula, specifically at the coracoid process. In other words, the pectoralis minor is a muscle that starts at the front of the chest and connects to the shoulder blade. So when the pectoralis minor contracts, it pulls the shoulder blade forward, greatly influencing its movement. On the other hand, the pectoralis major originates from the inner part of the sternum and the inner half of the clavicle. It starts even closer to the center of the chest than the pectoralis minor. The muscle we're discussing starts here, extends across the front of the chest, passes over the shoulder joint, and attaches to the outer part of the upper arm bone. In other words, the pectoralis major is the muscle responsible for moving the upper arm bone, or humerus. The pectoralis minor connects to the shoulder blade, while the pectoralis major connects to the upper arm bone. Understanding this structure allows for a wide variety of chest stretches. Let's start by looking at the approach for the pectoralis minor. The pectoralis minor primarily moves the shoulder blade while keeping the chest fixed. To stretch the pectoralis minor on the front of the chest, move the front of the shoulder blade, specifically the right shoulder process, downward and inward towards the spine as much as possible. You'll do this while lying on your back, focusing on lowering the right shoulder. This action creates a significant stretch in the pectoralis minor. Now let's turn our attention to the pectoralis major, which attaches to the upper arm bone. Since the pectoralis major connects from the center of the chest to the upper arm bone, you'll need to move the upper arm away and downward to stretch it effectively. Additionally, because the pectoralis major attaches to the outer part of the arm bone, rotating the entire arm outward will increase the distance between the muscle's origin and insertion points, enhancing the stretch. You can perform this stretch while lying on your back, as we're doing now. However, for an even greater stretch, I recommend trying it in a side-lying position. Now let's introduce the movement in the horizontal position as well. First, we'll focus on the approach for the pectoralis minor muscle. The pectoralis minor muscle connects from the front of the chest to the right shoulder process. Since it's connected to the shoulder blade, we'll create a movement that aims to move the shoulder blade outward and towards the spine while keeping the chest fixed. The key point here is to keep the upper arm as close to the body as possible. If the upper arm is too far from the body, the pectoralis major muscle will stretch before the pectoralis minor, limiting the stretch of the pectoralis minor to only as far as the pectoralis major extends. So, always make sure to keep your arms close to your body. From this position, use your main muscles to open up the front of the shoulder blade and the right shoulder process, moving them outward. Next, let's talk about the approach for the pectoralis major. Since the pectoralis major is connected to the humerus, we want to focus on moving the arm outward. The key point is to first rotate the humerus externally before applying the stretch. For the movement, we'll start by firmly establishing an external rotation position. With your arms spread out to the side, we're aiming for external rotation. To make it easier to understand, bend your elbow at 90 degrees. The goal is to have your forearm pointing towards your head. If the elbow moves downward from the center, that's what we call internal rotation of the shoulder joint. This is also a movement that occurs on the inside. With this movement, the starting and ending positions are too close together, so we always want to rotate the arm externally. After fully rotating your arm externally, we're going to drop the humerus outward in a big deliberate motion. Remember, our focus here is solely on the humerus. If the front of the scapula and the right shoulder process separate too much, it will cause the pectoralis minor to stretch excessively. So try not to change the position of the scapula too much. Instead, focus on moving the humerus outward as much as possible. However, when you actually perform this stretch, moving the humerus will inevitably cause some movement in the scapula. When you stretch the pectoralis major, you'll find that the pectoralis minor will also naturally stretch to some extent. If you want to target the pectoralis major more specifically, try to minimize the movement of the scapula before moving the humerus. Or if you want to focus more on the pectoralis minor, keep the humerus still and move the shoulder blade downward. Depending on which part you're targeting, the position of the muscles that stretch well will change. It's definitely a good idea to keep this basic concept in mind. Also, when stretching for a greater sense of extension, it's helpful to visualize the muscle fiber direction. The fiber direction of the pectoralis minor runs slightly diagonally upward. So when stretching the pectoralis minor, it's better to push in a slightly diagonal upward direction. On the other hand, the fiber direction of the pectoralis major runs almost horizontally. So for the pectoralis major, it's better to set the humerus horizontally to the shoulder and stretch it further outward. It's a good idea to study these concepts together: muscle origin, insertion, and fiber direction. As your chest area becomes more flexible, you'll be able to improve posture issues like rounded shoulders. The rib cage area will also become more relaxed, allowing you to take deeper breaths. In daily life, the chest area is primarily used in a contracting motion, so during treatment, it's important to focus on stretching it thoroughly. More specific approach methods are introduced in the summary section. If you're interested, please check it out. That concludes today's video. Looking forward to the next one. Thank you very much as always.